We are told that the world is a finished book, that every mountain has been measured, every sea charted. But some of us feel the gaps. Charles was one of those men. For years he had felt a phantom weight in his chest, a longing for a place he had never been. He didn't just want to travel, he wanted to find the static. The places where the signal of the modern world drops to zero and something much older begins to speak. Today, after weeks of trekking through the gray, nameless peaks of the north, he found it. The silence here wasn't empty. It was heavy. It was waiting. He reached into his pocket for his grandfather's compass, a tool that had survived 3 wars. But as he clicked it open, the needle didn't spin. It vibrated. A high-pitched metallic hum began to emanate from the brass casing. Then, with a sickening crack, the needle snapped. It didn't point north, south, east, or west. It pointed straight down, toward the very rock beneath his boots. The earth wasn't just beneath him anymore. It was calling to him. Following the invisible pull, Charles found a narrow fissure in the rock. It looked like a wound in the earth. As he squeezed through the tight opening, the temperature dropped. The air smelled of ozone and ancient dust, the scent of things that haven't been touched by sunlight for 1,000,000 years. He descended into a cathedral of shadows, where the only light came from a strange bioluminescent moss that pulsed like a slow, dying heartbeat. And then he saw it. In the center of the hollow sat a stone of impossible blackness. It was obsidian, yet it seemed to absorb the very light around it. But the most unsettling thing was the sound. A low, rhythmic thrumming that vibrated in Charles's teeth. It sounded like a crowd of people whispering just out of earshot. Millions of voices, laughing, crying, and screaming in languages he felt he should understand, but couldn't. A rational man would have turned back, but Charles wasn't rational anymore. The hum of the stone had synchronized with his own pulse. He felt as though his entire life, every failure, every loss, had been leading him to this exact moment. He reached out. His fingers trembled. The air around his hand became cold, then hot, then numb. The second his skin touched the obsidian, the whispers stopped. The world went silent. When he pulled his hand away, a single golden thread remained attached to his finger. It was as thin as a spider's silk, but burned with the brightness of a star. As Charles stepped back, the thread didn't break. It unspooled from the stone. It began to weave itself into the air, creating patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. He realized with horror that this wasn't just a stone. It was a loom, and he had just caught the thread of the world's story. The cave walls began to dissolve, the rock turned into light, and the light turned into trees, but not trees of wood and leaf. They were trees made of flickering images, scenes from lives Charles didn't recognize. He saw a wedding in a desert, a battle in a frozen wasteland, a child crying in a city that hadn't been built yet. He was no longer in the cave. He was inside the echo. But where there is light, there must be shadows. And the shadows in this place were moving. Something was prowling between the pillars of memory. Something that didn't have its own shape, but wore the shapes of things people fear most. It was the keeper of the loom. and it had been hungry for a new story to devour. Charles felt the golden thread on his finger tighten. He wasn't the weaver anymore. He was the bait. The shadow lunged, not with claws, but with a scream that contained the grief of 1,000 years. Charles ran. He ran through scenes of forgotten history, the golden thread trailing behind him like a fuse. Every time the shadow touched a memory tree, that memory vanished. It was erasing the world. If it caught him, it wouldn't just kill him. It would make it so he never existed at all. Charles reached the end of the forest and found a door made of solid light. He threw himself through it, the golden thread still tethered to his soul. He woke up on the cold stone floor of the cave, the monolith silent once more. But when he looked at his hand, the thread was still there, disappearing into the air. And from the darkness of the fissure he had just escaped, he heard a sound that made his blood turn to ice, a heavy, rhythmic breathing. He hadn't escaped the echo. He had brought it back with him, and the hunt has only just begun. What happens when the stories we tell start telling us? Find out in Part 2, The Descent.